As we have our participants file in here, appreciate you joining us tonight. Excited for this roundtable with some of the best club baseball guys in the country. Got some great pre-questions, but also we'll open up question and answer. This is set up in a webinar format, so if you're watching or listening live, at the bottom of your Zoom panel, there is a Q&A button. You can press that, type in a question for the group. And I'll pitch it to the guys and have them answer it. Again, we do have some questions that we'll start off with. We'll get started at about 2 or 3 minutes here. Give potential live listeners an opportunity to jump in. So we'll start here about 6:02 or 6:03. Again, looking forward to hosting this great panel and sharing some great information with those of you that are joining us live and those of you that will listen on the recording. Again, one more time for those just joining us live. We're going to kick off here in about 1 more minute. Exciting panel of some of the best guys in the space to talk about recruiting, player development, and the state of club baseball. Again, if you are tuned in live and want to ask questions, at the bottom of your Zoom, there's a question and answer button. Feel free to click on that. And you'll be able to ask any questions of the panel that we might not cover. So with that, guys, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So if we can go cameras on, and we will jump right in here. So first of all, let me introduce myself again. My name is Matt Gerber. I'm the Executive Director of the Diamond Allegiance. I'm really excited, like I said, to have a great group of guys that are at the forefront of club baseball, running some of the top programs in the country. I'm going to let them go ahead and introduce themselves here to start, and then we'll get things kicked off. Brian, if you wouldn't mind going first, that'd be great.
Sure. Brian Dempsey. I'm one of the co-founders of Power Baseball. We are based out of Florida, but we do have a few other branches up and down the East Coast.
And I'll hop in next. Devin Gerheart, Team Elite Baseball. Team Elite Baseball was founded in 2005. I am entering year 12 with them in the organization. Focus on 13 and 14-year-old directorship there. And I'll probably have a little bit of a unique take as well, as I played for Team Elite for 4 or 5 years prior to coaching and going through the college realm as well. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Dev.
Evan Romanchuk. I started the Iowa Sticks high school baseball program in 2011. Done that for a long time, still on as one of the directors, kind of handle the business relationships and some of the recruiting. And then also I'm the president of Spects National, which is a baseball organization made up of the Iowa Sticks, Nebraska Prospects, Arkansas Prospects, Minnesota Icemen, Encompass Expos out of Duluth, GBA out of St. Louis, Gators Baseball Academy, Prime Baseball out of Kansas City. And that's what makes up Spects National.
Thank you, Ev.
Hi, Matt Frey, AllStars Academy up in Latham, New York. This is my 6th year with travel teams here, first year with Diamond Allegiance. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Heath.
Yeah, I think I'm next. Heath Honeycutt. I'm a founder of Ninth Inning Baseball. We've been around for about 15 years now. I think it's our 15th season. Former Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket, All-American there, and played professionally for 7 years with Florida, Cincinnati, Arizona. And happy to be a part of this panel and looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you, Heath. And Jimmy.
Jimmy Osting. I am Ostingers Baseball Academy out of Tampa, Florida. We've been around for about 12, 13 years. I played professionally for 12 years with many different organizations, was drafted by the Atlanta Braves, up through the Atlanta system and traded a few times, made it to the big leagues with Milwaukee and San Diego. Happy to be here and try to help some parents and players out to help this recruiting process for them.
Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Jim. And again, appreciate all you guys for being on. So I'm going to jump right in and get us started here. And Jim, since if you were last, I'm going to put you on the tee first here, if you don't mind. We've got some new interesting recruiting rules that went into effect believe about a year ago, that really, I think, affect a lot of the younger kids. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of commenting on positives and negatives that you are seeing with the new NCAA recruiting rules.
Sure. I think the biggest thing that is a help is the schools that were kind of very early in the recruiting process and committed kids, sometimes even in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Obviously, that timetable is pushed back until at least their junior years now. I think that's a positive for the player. I think it's also a positive for the schools because, the word commitment was not really a word that meant anything. A school could commit a kid in 6th grade, and by the time his junior year rolled around, if he did not continue to progress and he was not the player that they thought he would be 6 years prior when they committed him in 6th grade, they could basically decommit him at any point in time. And then that kid who kind of was taken off that recruiting list, so to speak, had to jump back in at a very late date and try to find somewhere to play. Now, being that they have to wait until their junior year, that miss of a prospect or a commit has kind of taken itself out of the mix because they have to wait till at least their junior year to communicate and all of those things with college staff. So I think that that's a big thing because shoot, some of these kids don't even know what they want out of their high school programs, much less their college programs, and they haven't even stepped foot onto a high school campus yet, and they were already committing to colleges. So to push that timetable back, I think is huge and very beneficial to at least let kids and their families kind of settle in and figure out their high school program, see where they're going to be, see how they're going to progress, see how they're going to mature. Their body's going to mature at different stages. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that with the recruiting rules that have helped out. I guess the negative is, August 1st going into their junior year, it's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. Kind of everybody hits the market all at the same time. Very similar to, the portal. Everybody hits the market at the same time, and it's a feeding frenzy for several weeks to kind of figure out who's going after who and who wants who and things like that. So, shorter window, but once that window kind of opens, it's a free for all for a shorter period of time.
Great. Heath, follow up to that question. Has the recruiting rules changed the way you think about how Ninth Inning goes about their business, what they do and the services that they provide?
I actually like the rule, only because I think the development of players was kind of left behind. Everybody was just trying to get out there, get seen, run showcases, doing that stuff at such a young age that I thought that development through some of these players kind of fell behind. And the other piece of that, I think too, with the kids is, let's say they were recruited by Georgia Tech, for example, and they were done in 8th grade. In 8th grade, I was like 4'9" and 100 pounds soaking wet, right? So I never could understand how coaches, just because a kid threw harder than the rest of the kids, how they could recruit somebody that really hasn't seen anything above middle school baseball, maybe high school baseball at that point. So I think the rule is good. It is hard, and he's right on with drinking through a fire hose because come August 1st, it's phone calls, and trying to get things done. So I also like the camp rule a little bit, where you can't verbally commit anybody until I think September 1st. I think is the date when they can talk. So it's changed the landscape. Obviously, it's always gonna I think move a little bit, but I truly believe for the development of the kids, I think it's a better rule.
So Devin, you said specifically that, within Team Elite, you work with the 13 and 14-year-old kids, and how has this affected the way that you guys communicate with them? I know that for a long time, parents were feeling pressure at that age to get their kids seen, to get their kids committed. How's the trickle-down effect been, if any, yet? And, is the word getting around, like he said, that like development is really important at that young age, and it's less about being famous?
No, absolutely. I'd echo Heath there and say I think it's a fantastic rule, at least in my realm, right? Maybe not so much at the high school there, but when you're talking about 13 and 14-year-olds, I think the piece that we miss most often is they're mentally unstable at times, right? They're going through a lot of changes, and they're working through body changes and all these different things. And the last thing they need is this piece of FOMO, or fear of missing out on being recruited or committing to a school at 13 and 14 years old. So it has allowed us as a 13 and 14-year-old staff to kind of take a step back and say, hey, you don't need to be at every single event possible. You don't need to be at these showcases at 13 and 14 years old every single weekend. We can go back to the lab and we can work. We can, get you in a weight room. We can do all these things different that are more developmental. So when the time does come and it's open season, if you will, and you're allowed to talk to these schools, they're ready and they're packaged up and they're ready to go and kind of work through a lot of the struggles that they may have had at that point. And then, I think the other piece of it too is I always thought it was interesting when I was talking to these schools at 13 with 13 and 14-year-olds. To that point, they don't know what they want, and their wants and what they anticipate in a school or a college 3 or 4 years from now are going to be completely different than what they are as a 13 and 14-year-old. They want clout and they want fame and they want social media at 13 and 14 years old right now. And by the time they're 17 and 18, they may want a pitching lab, or they build a relationship with the coaching staff that's more important. So there's a lot of change there, but overall for us, and it's been a blessing. It's allowed us to kind of dig deep and really focus more on that development piece rather than, trying to sell kids to schools or have those conversations.
Awesome, Deb. Mike Porzio, I apologize. I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself. So if you wouldn't mind, jump in real quick and give an intro of yourself and your organization, and then I'll pose the next question to you. Mike, you're on mute, brother.
Hey guys, sorry.
No worries, brother.
Mike Porzio, the Clubhouse. We've been open 15 years, doing travel teams, somewhere around 12. And I played in the big leagues with a couple teams, and I scout with the Brewers right now. So, in terms of what's going on with these questions, I'm in agreement that everyone on this panel has heard from many colleges that all they really care about is can he play? That's what they want to know. And as a young player, you're trying to have that answer become a yes, but it's hard for anyone to know with full certainty because the bodies are changing and that changes positions and the dynamics of where they want to play. Are they going to be elite speed? Are they going to have real power? Like nobody really knows. There's indications of power and ability and all that. That's why people were getting committed early. But you're going from an indication that he should be able to play to he actually can play. They're more vetted, they're more proven, and it's a more reliable commitment on both ends, which will hopefully help with the decommitting process and kids finding a better fit overall, and schools getting fits that work better. So the portal is not jammed up with 6,000 kids that didn't find the right fit, So I'm a big fan, and like we teach, just like everyone else here, these are all great organizations. We're teaching kids to be better players. And so with more time, it only allows more window for them to keep elevating and growing. So I think it'll work out really well for all these organizations here because we are making kids better. And so the window is just going to give them the chance that maybe they didn't have, where some guys were just early with their physical development, which gave them some visibility, but didn't really give them, but early physical development doesn't mean that you're a better baseball player. It just means you look more impressive taking batting practice, but nobody's thrown the ball 60 miles an hour at Georgia Tech and all these other schools that have been mentioned, right? So anyhow, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mike, guys, just mentioned, and I don't think he did it on purpose, but lead me into my next question, our next topic, which is the transfer portal. And how are you guys, I'm going to kind of pose this to, I think, Matt and Brian and Evan, maybe kind of in a roundtable kind of discussion between you three. Like, what are you guys seeing with your players that are, one, being recruited now, but even two, are in college baseball now. I think there's two sides of the equation, right? Going through the recruiting process as a high schooler, going up against, the older players that are in the portal, and the opportunities that are there or aren't there. And then also, once you get to college, navigating the portal and what that looks like. So why don't I start with Dempsey, just so we got some order to it. And Brian, you can go first, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, first, I do want to just kind of close out the loop a little bit on the last piece. Is everyone was talking about, like, the emotional side of this is with this recruiting and these new rules, I think is the biggest piece that is impacting people positively without them even knowing it. Because at the end of the day, when our emotions get the most of us, that's when we're not going to perform well. That's when we start losing sight of what the end goal is. And, you can talk to some guys like Heath or guys like Jimmy or Mike who have played in the big leagues, and the separators of the guys at the highest level are the ones that can keep themselves emotionally under control. And when kids were able to be recruited as middle schoolers and at an age where they didn't even remember to put on deodorant in the morning, yet they're making life decisions, right? They're getting in a place where they're building their identity based off of these commitments and some of these statuses at such a young age, that it ended up getting to, I'm seeing more kids quit once they get to college more than ever because of some of the pressures they went through at 14 and 15 years old, right? So I wanted to not only mention that for the topic that was just there, but that actually is a direct segue into the portal, because those kids that were emotionally, unstable, right, at those younger age groups, they're the ones that are transferring quicker, right? And what people don't realize is, hey, 50%, it was like 49% of the players that went into the portal last year did not find another place to play. So many people think that if you go into the portal, that instantly means you're going to find another place. And actually, the numbers say it's not a good chance, because 50-50 is not good when you already had a locker somewhere else. So how that's affecting things is it's putting more work in validating us of, like, the holistic approach that I know everybody on this approach takes, because I know my phone, like everyone else's phone, are blowing up the last month with our former players, because we're the ones they go to kind of help them find another spot after the first spot didn't work out for whatever reason. So not only is it's creating more opportunity, but it is a wild, wild west scenario to where, there's different ways to get to the kind of elite level, as opposed to just going straight out of high school these days. So once you get in college, that's the biggest thing we're telling our current players is now the rule is get a locker somewhere, perform, and then more opportunities will present themselves. But also it makes getting into college even harder than it's ever been before, because there's three buckets they can pull from. Before it was junior college sophomores and high school seniors for each recruiting class, and now the other bucket is 5,000 current college players in the portal. So for the high school guys, it's taken those opportunities of 11% historically of high school players that go and play at the college level. I'm curious to see over the next few years, is that number actually shrinking, because it's harder to get into the college level than it ever has before. So opportunities more so for the guys that are currently in college, but it's actually harder than ever for the high school recruit.
Evan, how about you, brother? What do you see as the effects of the portal on your current?
I think the portal is a good thing. I know that, there's a lot of people that think that it causes some mayhem and, kids should commit to a school. But I think that for a long time, it was on the college coaches that, hey, they could bring them in and then they basically kind of own them. Right. And now I think there's a little bit of freedom of, hey, they're in a situation maybe that they don't like, it's not mentally good for them, or, hey, they're stuck behind a guy that came in and, from, a bigger school because of the transfer portal. And now he's having to find, a place where he's going to be able to get on the field. So I think that there's some added benefits, and, there's some players that develop at different rates. And if a player, maybe develops at a mid-major and does some great things, he's going to be able to maybe have that dream be achieved for himself and be able to go to a Power 5 school or his dream school. So I think that it allows players to keep working and know that they're not stuck. So I think there's some definite positive things there for our players. And I think that it keeps them working. And I think that it keeps players thinking that, hey, maybe I won't be safe, right? I've got to keep working, and the work ethic has to continue.
Matt, how about you, brother?
My experiences thus far in the recruiting, it's vastly, dramatically kind of affected position players, specifically my guys. I mean, I have guys that, 6, 7, 8 years ago that I know would be a Power 5 guy out of high school, but from a Power 5 perspective, why not take a mid-major kid that's proven, a sophomore with 150 at bats? So, it definitely has to. With what the first guy said, where you gotta find the right spot and perform, and then move on. But I think it kind of perpetuates the culture of what we're seeing in the travel level of some kids where a parent and a player always wants to blame somebody else for their shortcomings, and rather than stick it out and earn some time, we're going to go find another spot. And like we said, 50% of people didn't have a home. So I have a kid that is just entering the portal that he came in, didn't have a scholarship coming in. The coach gave him a scholarship. Had a great year this year, and now is looking to play at a higher level, and hats off to him. But from a player coach's perspective, he had a great relationship with that coach, and coach did a lot for him. And if it was me, I'd be pretty upset investing that much time and money into a kid. But on the flip side of it, if that coach had another opportunity to make some more money somewhere, he'd take it in a heartbeat. So I do think it's become the Wild West. There's some advantages to it, but I'm still trying to navigate from a recruiting aspect of how to get my guys to find the right spot where they're going to play right away, so they can be happy, and then they can possibly advance if the opportunity presents itself.
We got a question from one of our live attendees. I'm going to throw it out, and whoever wants to take it can take it. I think it's a great question. What's the realistic outlook for a player who's looking for a place where he can truly develop within a program and coaching staff? In your guys' estimation, how many college programs, maybe a percentage, are really looking for guys that can be part of a system and be part of the overall growth, versus how many of the college programs out there are just looking to re-recruit the portal every year?
I'll say on that. So I don't think you throw a percentage out there on it, but it depends on the level, right? How much pressure is there for them to win? And at the major college level, these college coaches are getting paid real money, right? So if people look at when Ole Miss won the national title a few years ago, for those who actually follow college baseball on a regular basis, the Ole Miss fan base and message boards were calling to fire Mike Bianco in the middle of the season. They won the national championship that year, right? So when you've got that type of pressure to where, hey, and that's a guy who's been at Ole Miss for 2 decades, and and it's tried and true. So when you have somebody who's that tried and true with that type of track record, and halfway through a season, because it's not going so great, people are calling for your head. They have to look at it as each semester, right? So the portal plays to just really kind of the situation that they're in. Are there some programs out there at the Division I level that are more like, we have a system and we find players that fit our system? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think that has become less and less the case since the one-time transfer rule has kind of been in effect since COVID? I do, but at the Division I level, or really whatever places have a ton of pressure to win, they don't have 2 or 3 years, of a lifeline on their job to wait for a kid to develop.
Yeah, to add to that, Brian, I think that you're going to have guys that are fighting for their jobs. So hey, this kid, came in the portal throwing 95 miles an hour and had a 2 ERA at a mid-major. That's his livelihood, right? That's what he's thinking about when, he's got to go home and feed his family. So that's a very real kind of thing that you touched on, Brian. And, when it comes to development, of course, coaches are going to, want to develop their players, but there's going to be, the NIL situations where, hey, they've got a lot of money that they can bring in somebody that's had a lot of success, or a big high school name, that maybe get them away from the draft. You're going to see that, and that's not necessarily development. That's spending money on a college athlete. So you're going to see that a little bit. But for the most part, you just got to do your research. And when players are doing their visits, they should talk to the players on the team. Like, what is the development here? I had a player that went to a pretty big school here recently, and he wanted to transfer because he didn't feel like he was getting any development. Like he felt he got better development with us. It was just more of kind of show up, play catch. So, he was looking to go to a school that, had a pitching lab, that had, a true development system. And he did, and he's having a lot of success. So, I think that when you're looking at a school and the development, you just got to kind of look at the level of it and, what are they trying to do? If you're looking at a big name school that's in the College World Series every year, it's going to be a real possibility that they're going to go to the transfer portal every year and spend money. So that's a deal. But development, they're going to try to get their players better. So it's kind of a flip a coin when it comes to some of the bigger schools for sure.
Would you guys kind of as a group agree that this question is probably more dependent on, like we said, the more pressure to win, the more that turnover in that transfer portal is going to be a part of it? At the mid-major, Division II, right? NAIA, junior college, Division III level. I think a majority of those schools are still trying to find high school kids that can be a part of their program, that they can develop, hopefully not develop good enough that they can go and leave the school. And that's the hard part for college coaches. But would you guys as a whole kind of agree that this issue is probably a little bit overblown because of the nature of big time Division I college baseball, and that's such a minuscule number of players that are actually getting opportunities at that level? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's.
I agree.
I also want to add that I live next to a Division III school that is not recruiting high school kids. They are solely taking portal guys, and I don't think the pressure is there to win, because I don't think it's a super high paying job, but I think the expectation to win is there. So, another coach said doing your research is such an important thing, where you not only have to listen to the coach and what he says, but there's a little piece of, a salesman in every one of us and all the coaches. So you also have to look at, the history and the roster and the kind of turnover that they have there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Matt, I can hop in there too.
Yeah, please.
I think a lot of positives that have happened in the college team too is you see the third assistant, you see more and more money being dumped into college baseball right now too, which is a fantastic thing, and NIL deals and everything. But with that money dump and with all the resources being added, expectations are added as well. So it's not only just the coach's job, but it's also expectations on the player at that point. If they're going to get paid, then people want to see success. They want to see that player produce as well. So there's that piece of it for sure.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Heath.
Yeah, no,
Heath, go ahead.
Kind of one of the things that I've been seeing and talking with coaches, more Division II, Division III, NAIA. Some of them are using this as a sales piece to get kids out of high school. Maybe some better players say, "Hey, I put this amount of kids at Division I, Power 5." So they're almost seeing themselves now as another stepping stone. So instead of just coming from high school or travel ball, it's now kind of Division II, Division III, kind of being a springboard on using that portal a little bit.
Jim, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
I was actually going to say something very similar as Heath there. I think the schools that embrace the portal, college schools, programs that embrace the portal are guys, high school kids are more willing to want to go there because, hey, if I go out here and do well and there's an NIL deal at a Power 5 conference, this coach isn't going to hold me back. He's kind of promoting it, where the other ones are, they want their guy. And I can understand both sides of the story. They want their guy and they want to hold on to their guy. And, hey, I made you the guy that you are. Why would you want to leave here? I think those guys have a hard time kind of like keeping that same level of player wanting to continue to go there. So, we're all kind of saying it, but, major Division I baseball is a business now. From producing any job, you're going to keep your job. You don't produce in any job, you're not going to be there for very long. So it's the same with the coaches. It's the same with the players. I think for players, you got to find that fit. You might not be the guy throwing 92 with a really good sinker and a good slider coming out of high school, but 2 years more development, and you might be that guy. To go to a major Division I school, but are you going to go to that major Division I school and sit on the bench for 2 years and not get a ton of time and just throw in inter squads and do that? or are you going to go somewhere that you can go and compete and, maybe help a mid-major, win some championships?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
You know,
think there's some schools that are kind of taking the basketball approach of the one and done. I know some of the people that have like a lot lower budget. Some of these Division I schools are saying like, yeah, come here. This is our approach now. Like, come here for a year, do really well, and we'll help you move on. And hope that they catch lightning in a bottle that year. That hey, they can go make a run. So I think that coaches are getting creative with that. Which is sometimes a good thing, right? And sometimes a bad thing.
A tangible action item to kind of give this audience of families of high school players is, it just comes to show you that it's happening later than ever, because I can tell you this, we have countless stories even within the last year, but I can tell you a school around here, Division II school, who lost in the Division II World Series last year. On July 10th, they lost their shortstop to the portal, and he ended up going to an SEC school, right? So, I mean, it was in a month before the fall semester is calling, and they need a shortstop that can take them back to the Division II World Series because they just lost it, right? So there's kids that were, I'm making phone calls to kids that didn't have a place to play. They think they're going to go to school as a normal student, and like, hey, a spot just opened up. Are you ready? Right. So I think, not only do, players need to understand that it's really never too late. And we've had 10 players in the last 4 weeks that are high school seniors actually commit in our program. We have 2 more that have offers right now, and they're about to graduate this weekend. So just understanding that it happens senior year for the overwhelming majority is just a super important piece to get people to understand that you're not late when you get to your senior year. You're actually right on time. And the other piece of advice I do want to throw out to this group is that one of the most common things I'm hearing from college coaches is, you know why I like recruiting kids out of the portal versus a high school kid? Because when I talk to a kid out of the portal, he says, Coach, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this, this, and this. And if we can check all those boxes, he goes, you got it, I'm in. When I talk to a high school kid, I offer him, and then he wants to take 2 months, and then he wants to think about it, and then grandma wants to get on the phone, and she wants to ask some questions, and he's like, it's a big life decision. He goes, we don't have time for that these days. So I know that with the portal guy, I'm either going to get a yes or a no within a few days. The high school guy, we have to play this runaround merry-go-round for 6 months. So just something to consider, you high school families, you have to be ready when the offers present themselves, because sometimes you can't wait for the offer to happen for you to now start the process of being ready.
Yeah, and then also to add to that, Demps, is like the draft being pushed back now a couple of weeks too has changed things, right? Because schools now don't realize, who's going and who's not coming back, after their junior year. So I think that now, now end of July, I'm getting calls all the time for, catchers at the Division I level because, they shuffle them around. Guy gets a pro contract. It's now late too, right? So there's like guys that, end of July still don't have a school. Now all of a sudden a big name school comes open because of the draft. Guy signs that they didn't think was going to sign, hole comes open. So to your point, it's definitely changed, and the draft has affected it as well.
Well, this transitions me, guys, to my next question, and I think it sets the tone well, right? Like, the landscape is changing at the college level, and that's what club baseball exists to do, right? Is to train players and get them to the next level. That's our job, right? So with the landscape changing there, the question I'm going to ask is, how have you guys, whether it's adjusted your own businesses, what you offer, or how do you see this changing the landscape of youth club baseball? What are the trickle down effects to what's going on there? We talked about recruiting happening later. We've talked about not being able to be recruited as a younger player. So where is the pivot, and what's the change that you guys see happening in this space? Heath, we'll start with you just so we've got a first one, and then we'll go to Mike afterwards.
Yeah, my thing is, if I look at kind of how travel baseball and club baseball has kind of changed over the course of 4 or 5 years, maybe even a little bit more than that, is the pendulum's kind of swung back from when we first started. It was all about 15 years ago. It was more about development, creating players, and over that time, that pendulum has swung all the way to where it was showcase, travel team, don't worry about your skill set, just get out there, get seen. And I truly believe it's starting to come back, especially with all this stuff that's happened with the portal and everything else. You've got to be ready to go when you get a call, when a coach wants you. And that is probably for another question, but go to a school where somebody wants you. I deal with so many kids that they have these 4 or 5 schools and they got to go there. And if they don't go there, they're not looking at the other 6, 7 coaches that really, really want them to play. And then they end up in that situation where, you know, they sit for a year, then they're unhappy, you know, but they're at the school, one of the schools that they wanted to go to. You know, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but there's been so many great conversations that I wanted to get that out, because I truly do believe that it's in our world, it's starting to come back to more development and being that turtle back to get these kids on to be successful at the next level. And, you know, I think it was Jim or maybe it was Evan talking earlier about maturity and getting these kids mature, man. I tell all of my kids that parents that are 14, 15, 16, look, they're going to take their brain out and they're going to put it on a shelf, and they're not going to get it back till maybe they're in college, right? So for us is to be able to guide them and help them in decisions in life and in baseball to be successful at that next level.
Mike, how about you? How do you see the role of the club organization either changing? Has it changed for you? Has it stayed the same? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
I'll answer it this way. I will say that in the marketplace, like, the people who are making the choices know the market. So for, you know, a lot of the travel clubs like us and everyone on the call, sometimes we're in these conversations, we're trying to help players understand where they belong. And as it was just mentioned, some players feel like they should be at these 4 or 5 schools, and they're not looking at some of the other choices that are there. You know, I would say, like, you need to kind of see where your market value is. You need to listen to the people that are in the know. You know, obviously we have a long-standing experience in these spaces, so it should be valued, the opinion that we offer. You're always welcome to get your own opinion, but the game is giving you an opinion, and so are the coaches that are doing the recruiting. And I would listen to that opinion because they know what they're looking at. And when you're forcing like the round peg in the square hole, those are the ones that wind up in the portal a lot. And I would say for the kids that are playing travel and the pressure of all of that, you know, having a bad day, a lot of kids think they're horrible and they're done, or I didn't get to play shortstop today and Georgia Tech was here and now they're mad at the coach. Like, the coaches do their due diligence. They know what's going on. They know the players, and they're having conversations. So just because you had not your best day, or you didn't get to, you're playing second base, you didn't play shortstop that day, and now you won't be recruited. That's not true. They're looking at how you play, how you move, how you carry yourself, what kind of teammate you are. And so I would say when you have a bad day, you're not as bad as you think. When you have a great day, you're not as good as you think. It is coming back to, you know, you got to be a consistently reliable player. The level of play happening at the SEC in these top divisions is really at the best it's probably ever been. It's so good. And I think the young kids need to know that this is high brand of baseball. And so you need to be very on point. And really, like we talk about all these organizations, just becoming a better version of who you are. That's what we're doing. We're training them into a better version. And if you're not ready yet, then just accept you're not ready yet. It doesn't mean that you won't have a home. It just, maybe you're not ready for the home you want. So keep doing your work, you know, buy into the training and the development side of it. And I mean, dude, I would have wanted to be a major leaguer at 18 or 19, like all of us, but it took me longer than I wanted, you know, and I didn't stay as long as I want, but you know, we all have stuff to overcome. And if you have stuff to overcome, join the club. Like, you're not walking on water. So, you know, just get your work done and you'll find that's where you're going to find your happiness. Not just saying it's got to be this school. Do your work, and then you'll be able to be a kind of player whose your brand of baseball will play anywhere. If you're not that brand of baseball, then make it better. And then just believe me, the schools will come knocking in some form or another.
Love it. Thank you. Jim, how about you? You've been in this game a long time, obviously played the highest level, just like Mike, but on the travel side, is that pendulum that Heath discussed, does that kind of ring true with you? And if so, like, how are you adjusting what you do?
I think for us, we've always been about player development. We're fortunate enough to kind of start in Florida here. We have travel teams that started 8 years old. And honestly, when I first started doing this travel ball thing 12, 14 years ago, 8U was like, man, are we just getting out here and picking daisies in the outfield, or, what are we actually doing at that age group? But even at the young ages, I feel like it is a developmental thing. And I think the earlier that you can get into a system, you're not just developing the players, but I think you're also developing the families that they have to buy into. There's a certain, for us in our program, there's a certain way to go about it. There's, we don't have the walk-up music and we don't have all those things, but it's a culture and it's an atmosphere that for us has proven itself over a 12 to 15 year period of being successful to get guys playing at the next level. So it is a developmental thing for the players, but it's also a developmental thing for the parents to kind of understand that, as much as little Johnny is great at 12, when he's 16, nobody's going to care about, how many home.
Lost you for a second there, Jim.
I think that that's something that's really important and big, that the parents have to buy into the system as much as the player, if not more, especially at the younger ages. So that developmental thing is something that I feel like gets lost in the shuffle. We have parent meetings all the time, just kind of making sure that parents understand, this is why we do what we do. And as long as they buy in, then the kids buy in, and it's fun to watch that development. I know that it can be tedious and tough. This game is not easy, as Mike said a minute ago. It's not an easy thing, but it truly builds character. And baseball is going to end one day. And, that process of development and understanding how hard it is and learning how to deal with failure is a huge part of baseball, but it's also a huge part of life. Those are things that, at the early ages, if you can kind of set those in, and everybody's talking about, the early recruiting and later recruiting, if you can develop those skills and understand how to deal with failure at a young age, when you get to 16, 17, and 18, and it is, matter what you're doing on the field, you can handle the failure. I think, and I don't want to get long-winded, but I think one of the biggest things that kids don't understand in this whole recruiting process is coaches want to see you fail. They want to see how you react when you fail. Are you a bad teammate when you fail? We're all going to go 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. It's going to happen. But how do you deal with that? They know how you're going to deal with it if you're successful. Everybody's going to be in a great mood, and you're going to be a good teammate, and all those things happen when you're successful. But what happens when you're 0 for 3, 0 for 7? Do you throw your helmet? Do you get thrown out and running your mouth to the umpire, whatever that might be? Or do you understand that you've got to grind and get through it? And I think that that's a big part of recruiting that coaches ask me about all the time. How does he handle failure?
Jim, that's the biggest thing that parents don't understand, right? Is that right there? Is that everyone they want their kid to get better, but like you said, failure is a massively important ingredient in development. It really is. And then they also have to understand that that's the question that we get asked all the time. And we get asked all the time, well, how do the parents handle it, right? How do they go? Because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And how are they doing it? Because that's their role model at their house. So I love this opportunity and hearing what you're saying, because you and I have talked about this a ton, but this is the biggest thing, is that parents have a very important role in this recruiting. They have actually the toughest position, because they're just as invested as anybody in the process, actually more so invested, because not only are they time-wise invested, the parents, not only are they emotionally invested, they're the only ones that are financially invested within this process. So they're the most invested, but also at the same time, they're told that they can do the least, right? And they kind of just have to basically just be supportive and not say too much. So that's a really hard position for the parents to be in, but that's the role. That's the lane that you have to be in. You have to allow your son to fail. You have to allow him to be coached. You have to allow him to be challenged. You have to hold him accountable to make sure that he's being a good human being on how he's handling the adversity publicly, and push him to keep kind of going even when times seem tough. So, but that's the biggest thing, because of this whole transfer portal one and done type of stuff. Toughness is the next tool that's on there. How tough is he? Because we're going to make decisions really quick. And like you said, those questions I think are the biggest thing, and probably what I feel like I spend most of my time talking to college coaches about is what their character is like under adversity.
Yeah, love it. One more topic I think we got time for here, guys. And I think there was a question in the chat that Brian answered, but it kind of goes hand in hand. So the question was, showcases, as parents were inundated with offers to go to camps and showcases, are they important, and what age should you consider? Brian's response was, and I think this is fair to answer this part of the question, is if college coaches are not in attendance, then it's just chasing rankings, which zero colleges care about. Showcase camps provide a value, but they're not necessary, especially for underclassmen. And Brian added, I would suggest finding a coach you trust their ability to evaluate, understand how recruiting works, and ask for honest feedback of, am I ready? And then when I'm ready, which one should I attend? I think that's a great answer to the showcase question. What I would like to pose to each of you, and we can go around the horn on this one, is if there were one thing that players and parents should know that is currently routinely accepted as you have to do this, or the norm, and they don't need to be doing it, what would it be? Again, the question would be, if there's one thing that players and parents kind of universally think and accept that, I have to do this, what would it be? And what would the alternative to that be? So let's just jump in, and you guys can take it in whatever order you like to.
Yeah, I think with showcases, it just kind of depends on the player and where they're at. Is a player ready to be showcased? I think at, the younger ages, like 13, 14, there's really nothing, there to showcase. Other than, if there's players that have, early puberty and, they want to, get their name out there, it's clout chasing, like you said. But maybe freshman year, if a kid shows promise and he throws 80 miles an hour, what we like to do inside the organization is track progress, right? So, hey, this kid maybe was 85 as a freshman, but he's 87 as a senior, and this kid was 80 as a freshman, and now he's 90 as a senior, right? What is the progression rate? Is the kid plateaued, or has the player developed? Is he showing a pattern of development? So I think that in terms of tracking the numbers for coaches to see development and make decisions, it'll help you. It could also hurt you, right? So if you're that freshman that throws 90 miles an hour and you're throwing 91 as a senior, that's going to hurt you because you haven't showed that you put in the work and developed, or you just might have just been an early puberty player. So I think showcase is good for tracking, but it's you don't need to go to one every month. It's maybe one a year, just to kind of show those numbers and show your development and show that you're working.
Heath, I'll at least call on everybody so we're not stepping on each other's toes. So Heath, your answer.
I think it kind of go into the question of kind of one of those misconceptions that parents think have to happen to get their kid onto the next level, is going to play for a higher ranked team than the one you're on and thriving with, right? And I don't know if this plays with everybody, but it's very frustrating when a kid has the opportunity on a team and plays, let's say, shortstop and, hits third and has most of the at-bats and is developing through the organization, whether it's through lessons or, their training systems or arm development programs or whatever. And then they attain a level. Let's call it, I like to say from 15 to 17, it changes. So 15, real successful, you're on a good team, it's a ranked team, it's fine. And then 16 comes around and they start looking around and go, well, I need to go play for these guys because they're ranked higher. And that kid's going to Tennessee to play. And I need to go play with him because if I play with him, then maybe I'm going to get to Tennessee or to wherever. I truly believe that development, and Jim was talking about this earlier, development is extremely important at the age group that is 8s to 18s. Because when you get onto that next level, everybody around you is as talented at whatever level that is, right? What's going to separate yourself is going to be, the ability to be better at your skill set. So chasing a team isn't where it's at. You're going to get seen by the same coaches. We're picking up phones as I know Brian is, or everybody's picking up phones and calling for our players. They're seeing it. The coaches are making that decision on whether they want you to come play for them. So I think that's kind of the misconception that I see a lot. It's unfortunate. It may go into, it kind of parallels with what's happening maybe at the college level now, or it didn't happen as much because of the, the portal. It's a lot easier to move around. So, it's a little bit of loyalty stuff and where are you getting better, right? If you're getting better, stick. If you don't feel like you're getting that opportunity or getting better, then move. That's a valid point.
Yeah, and Heath, I love it. I would add a caveat to that for those that are listening. And obviously the people that are associated with the Diamond Allegiance in our mind are at the highest level of this, right? My caveat would be that make sure that you're with an organization that has those contacts, right? That has the ability to get you better, but could also pick up the phone and make a call on your behalf, because those relationships are earned over time and energy and effort, right? So I think as a whole, yeah, if you're on this panel today, you can do that, right? But every travel ball organization is not made the same, right? And so I do want to throw a caveat to that, right? That there's a certain level as families that you should be looking for and expecting from your organization. You should be expecting your organization to be run by people that mirror people that are on this call, right? That have the knowledge base, that have the contacts, and can help your kid actually achieve that next level. Once you get to that level, I think there should be, a little bit of understanding among the group. And obviously one of the things that we're working on through the Diamond Allegiance. Mike, pose the same question to you. What's one thing out there that you think parents, think that they need, but they might not necessarily need it?
I'll answer it with what you need to do is get to the end goal of relationship with college coaches and quickly find out which is the right one. From what you need to do is visit schools, find out start in your area. You don't need to get on an airplane, but all of us live near colleges. So start with, you want the big school experience, the smaller school, finances, all these are real things. So, and playing is a question that the coaches like the panel can help families understand, but you want to know the education and the things that matter to you as a family should still matter. So when you have a school offering you that doesn't fit those criteria, stay with the criteria, because life, like Jimmy was talking about, baseball doesn't go forever. So make sure you're not giving up life priorities just because the school came knocking. And I've heard it all the time, just like many of us have heard that you begin with this school and then all of a sudden another school knocks, and now it's like, well, hold on, what happened? Like, why are we giving up education, and going to new standards of, so stay with your standards. When schools ask you to fill out questionnaires, they send it to you, fill them out. It's a measure of interest. You can at least give them the courtesy showing that's something you'll take the time to do that for them. And college coaches switch. So be respectful in these communications, know where you want to go, because not answering a school because they're not on your priority list, you'd be amazed how in this circle, they all know each other, so they talk. So be a person that you'll be proud of, your family will be proud of, the organization will be proud of, that you handle the process with dignity, be just respectable to the schools. And on the showcase front, because it was part of the question, showcases are a means to the end, basically, that it's supposed to get you, if you do amazingly well, validate some data if you haven't had anything there, and maybe schools take interest. So it's a path, but it's not the best path. It's a path. So if you have no other path, then sure, it's something you might need to consider. But the people that are part of these organizations, they have a path that doesn't require the showcase route. That's one of the benefits you have. And while you spend money to be in these elite travel programs, one of the returns on is that you don't need to be spending money on all kinds of showcases, because we have access in a different way. And I would recommend for families that don't have the same access, put something on Instagram or whatever. And if coaches like it, they'll follow you. And, there's a simple means in. And sometimes you may need extra support with your skills or with other things. And so maybe you need to go check out a PBR or whatever it is. But the families that are fortunate enough to be on teams in these programs, I think you have confidence that between the advice and the connections that you're going to get, you won't need to seek out every showcase. And I would say most of them may not even be in your best interest, because coaches may be set up to watch you. Now it's like, oh, I can't be there. I'm going to a showcase. And so talk with your program directors that do this. That way, if you are going to go, it's done in a way that works best for your family.
Appreciate that, Mike. Really good insight. Dev, how about you, brother?
Yeah, I'm actually going to give you two. Mine, again, are a little more focused on maybe 13, 14, 15. The one being, you do not need to play every weekend. That's showcases and tournaments. It's okay to take weekends off as families. Spend some time together, maybe away from the field occasionally as well, is, a big one for me. I think the pickup culture that we have in youth baseball and travel baseball right now, where guys are playing for 4 different organizations or teams on weekends, and they have to be playing every weekend. Missing a one tournament one weekend does not make or break your son's career in any capacity. So that's one. The second one, I think, just the difference between, and I use this with my families, exposure versus exposure. The first one being, hey, there's an exposure piece to tournaments when you talk about playing at the highest level against the best competition. So exposure to that type of level of play for me is a big one, right? Like I want guys to be, seeing at 13, 14, 15, I want them to see 90-mile-an-hour arms. I want them to see the best arms in the country. I want them to compete with guys that are of like mindset in all capacities, right? So that exposure to me is a positive. But at the same time, at these ages, it feels like families are way more concerned about the exposure piece in terms of showcases, college coaches, camps, and of that manner. So just understanding the two differences between, there needs to be an exposure piece of, hey, he's seeing way better competition here, let's get him there. And an exposure piece of, hey, he's either ready or he's not to be placed in front of a school. And I think, again, we mentioned the new recruiting rules. That's been a huge help in this. But man, 2 or 3 years ago, I think a lot of families had exposure confused for exposure, and they really didn't understand what they were kind of working through.
I'm going to have to steal that one from you. I'm not going to lie. I like that. So if the other guys want to steal it, you can too.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Frey, how about you? What's the one thing in your mind that families, players think that they need in this process that they probably really don't? Oh, hold on, Matt, you're on mute, buddy.
Sorry about that. I lost service. I was at a baseball game and a foul ball came my way and dropped my phone. So apologize. I think everyone does think they need to play every weekend and go to every showcase. I mean, my best piece of advice would be, at an early age, find what type of player you are and maximize that type of player. Find your box and try to work as hard as you can to to accelerate at that type of player. So if you're a power hitter, work at that. If you're a speed guy, work at that. If you're an overall ball player, which is, 95% of the players that aren't going to show well at showcases, if you're going to go to one of the showcases, look for one with games, one with 4 or 5 games. So someone that can see you, a coach that can see you play 4 times. My advice to guys as far as the showcase thing goes is, pick your schools that you like and attend those. And, if you do well, go to it the next year and the following year. A lot of these other showcases are for profit and you're paying coaches to be there. That's not to say that they're not watching you play, because, if you do well, they are. But it's really hard to distinguish yourself from the pack of, 100 players there when you got 2 players that are amazing and 2 players that are terrible and everyone else that looks the same. So, hit a college camp that has 20 kids there, where you can interact with coaches and you can learn what, especially if it's a school that you want to go to, you can learn what kind of player they're looking for and what they see you kind of fitting, and you can work really hard on developing yourself to be that. I have a player at Coastal Carolina that went 3 years in a row, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. And, everyone around here told him he was crazy. He could never play at Coastal. And, they really told him the player that they are looking for. And he worked really hard on becoming that player. And now he's, their best hitter, has been for a couple of years. So, really target the stuff that you're going to. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of money involved in this. And especially if you're playing on any sort of travel organization, is a lot of money. But so it's best to target your money and go to a couple events where, that they fit best for you. But also, like when you're 13 years old, unless you're throwing 90, like you can probably wait a couple years, wait till to strike while the iron is hot, while you're actually at a recruitable age and actually, have a recruitable body and skill set.
Thanks, Matt. Jim, how about you, brother?
I mean, a lot of really good answers from the panel. I would just say, find a place that you feel love. I think a lot of people are like, hey, let's go jump on this team because of a name. And then you go jump on that team and you're sitting behind 3 other shortstops and you could have been playing on a really good team somewhere else. Kind of like Heath said earlier. I think that's part of it. Trust the process. The process of recruiting is not easy. Sometimes it's not fun, but you have to trust the process and see it all the way through. And then, just know as a player, know who you are as a player. If you're a Division II player, maybe it's a size thing, or maybe it's just, you're a late developer or whatever. It could be a D2 or a D3 program. That doesn't mean you're a bad person because you're not a Division I baseball player. I think that's something that, kind of gets lost. It's like D1 or bust. And that's, there's so many really good programs. I mean, we live in the state of Florida, and the Sunshine State Conference Division II is unbelievable baseball players. So, I'm probably not fully answering the question because of a lot of really good answers, but I think the parents need to understand that, this is a process. They are a part of the process. They are being watched just as much as, sometimes the players are. But get into a program, ask questions as parents, with your travel ball programs. Hey, how many players in the last 5 years have you gotten to the next level, and what does that look like? And even some high school programs that are forcing their players to play summer baseball in their high school programs and not playing on elite level teams that just play locally. Is that helping your player get to that next level? And then when you get to the end of the road, they're picking up the they're picking up the phone and calling the 6 or 7 people on this panel saying, hey, help me. And we could have been helping for the last 3 or 4 years, but you weren't here. So I think that's something that you got to really understand and grasp as a parent, that I've got a lot of college baseball players that didn't play a ton in high school because there was a guy in front of them, or for whatever reason. But our programs, these guys on this panel, help kids get to the next level. So I would definitely be asking those questions within your program and within your your teams and even your high school coaches, hey, I have an opportunity to go play somewhere that is going to help me get there.
Really good, Jim. Evan, have you answered this one yet?
Yep, I was first.
Okay, so I think Dempsey, you're I started with you. I think we're ending with you.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm mirroring everything. These are phenomenal answers. The one I want to go a deeper dive on is actually is Heath's. You know, talking about they're so concerned about the status of what team they're on within an organization. And look, I know we're kind of all, you know, vouching for each other, and I hope that shows a lot to these families on this that are hearing this, because all of us compete against each other. But I hope you can see the respect that we have for each other. And there's you it's what who you play for shouldn't have anything to do with what team you're on within the organization. It's, are you with an organization that genuinely cares about you? And I can tell you that I mean, me and Mike alone, Porzio, right? Like he called me and said, hey, I'm putting on an event up here in the Northeast. Do you have some guys down there, you know, looking for some high level players? Mike, we sent you 2 guys up there. Were they good players? Is Mike still on this?
He is, yeah.
Yeah, like they were really good players. Neither one of the guys we had sent up there were top team guys. Both of them are playing Division I baseball, you know, and like, you know, Mike called me and said, hey, I got a guy that wants to come in the Southeast. Do you have a connection at this school in the Southeast? Yes, I do. Right. So like, I hope you guys understand that the people that are on this call, these organizations, they don't care. Like if you play for 9th inning, I don't care if you play on